in order to sit down at the table with Donald Trump to have a conversation, he wants those disrespectful comments about the 51st state to end.
A lot going on here today. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we got Mark Carney announcing a $6 billion radar dish for the North in Iqaluit. This is something that was already been planned and in the works for a couple of years now. He's just trying to kind of take credit for it and seem like he's a prime minister that's doing something. We also have the woke left melting down and trying to cancel Rosemary Barton after she went after Mark Carney with a question about conflicts of interest in London yesterday. Now the woke left want her gone. They're boycotting her. They're banning her. We got a bunch of other stories. Let's jump into this. First up, we got a bunch of polling data. It's not good polling data. Coming from Shreya Teest here, we've got 42% for Liberals, 39% Conservatives. This is on a latest Leisure poll. We've got this one from Ipsos, which shows 42% Liberals, 36% Conservatives. We've got this one from Liaison Strategy showing 37% Liberals, 35% Conservatives. And we've got this one from Angus Reid showing 42% Liberals, 37% Conservatives. All these polls don't look good. The situation doesn't look good. While there is probably a response bias with many of these, Liberals are more likely to pick up the phone and answer a poll. Conservatives are out working. There's no doubt that this race is tightening, and Pierre Poilievre needs to come out, I think, with stronger stance on some of the more important issues like immigration and cutting taxes. He just came out 2 days ago talking about cutting the industrial carbon tax. I think he needs a big tax cut plan just for general taxes and really drilling down on immigration and bringing up the issues of housing and how the Liberals have doubled housing costs, because it seems Liberal supporters have forgotten about all of this. More importantly, the on-the-fence voters that are floating between the NDP, the Liberal, and the Conservatives. People saying, why haven't the Liberals called an election? Well, that's a good point. If this shows the Liberals being in a favorable position, why won't Carney pull the trigger? So is there a response bias? Are there more Liberals answering the phones? Is Angus Reid and Liaison and Leisure, Ipsos, are they calling more city centers where you're going to get way more Liberals versus calling people in more rural areas or in towns where it's going to be more Conservatives? Jumping ahead, we got Joy says this entire Liberal Party over the last 10 years is summed up in one screenshot. The Canada carbon rebate puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 families. Pierre Poilievre would take it away. He'd leave Canadians worse off and stop our fight against climate change. And today, we're taking action. Carbon tax canceled. Exactly. So are you guys hurting Canadians now, taking away our beloved checks? The one I've never seen, adjusting with the times. It's just so sad. You have Liberal supporters. They just won't acknowledge that this was a lie. It's been a lie for years. Just acknowledge it. The government lied to us. And here we have Mark Carney arriving in Iqaluit. Nothing like using that gas-guzzling jet to go do a photo op in Iqaluit, right? Mark Carney, saving the world, right? Net zero. We'll get to net zero like this. He's announcing a $6 billion radar system, which really has been in the works for the last 4 or 5 years. They're basically just sending Carney everywhere to try to get more footage of him so they can use it in a campaign ad, looking like a prime minister.
And today I'm announcing that our government will be working with our long-standing defense and security partners, Australia, to build a new long-range, over-the-horizon military radar system. This is an investment of more than $6 billion in the most advanced and efficient radar system.
The money is going to magically appear like the votes did for the Liberal leadership election. Exactly. And as I said here, I can't find where this money's coming from. Is it the defense spending budget? Is this already approved? Or is this just make-believe money and he's just out here pretending to be a prime minister because he doesn't have a seat in the House of Commons, unelected? Later in this press conference, he's asked about the Liberals promising so much to the North and essentially delivering nothing. And he comes out and starts talking about trust.
I think a couple of things. One, you build trust, if I may. You build trust with results, and over time, and particularly if that lack of trust also reflects overpromise, underdeliver.
Every second word, this guy says more than Justin Trudeau. And trust, in the past month, this guy's had 6 different major events he's lied about. He's a pathological liar. He'll lie about anything and everything. I see Carney inherited Justin's tickle trunk of costumes. This man lies more than anyone I've seen. He talks down to both sides and the Liberals love him for it. Vampires sucking the brains out of people. Exactly. Moving ahead here, we've got this. Carney held 6.8 million of Brookfield options before quitting for political run. So they've broken this down here. Basically his assets, his stocks here, he says 409,000 shares worth $37 a piece from Brookfield. So basically about $7 million of Brookfield shares. That doesn't tell us what his assets are in his blind trust. This whole blind trust situation, it should be mandatory to come out with exactly what he's holding shares in, the value, the exact asset, all of it. This is important information for Canada to know. If you look at Brookfield through Train, they provide those heat pumps. Well, who's been pushing heat pumps for a long time? Justin Trudeau. Who is Justin Trudeau's economic advisor? Mark Carney. Brookfield benefited from Justin Trudeau pushing those heat pumps being sold through Train. It's just one basic conflict of interest. How many does he have? If we take a look here, if he breaks conflict of interest act, you see here, the maximum fine is $500. Come on. That's so absolutely absurd. Moving over to the CBC, as Marty up north pointed here, I did not have this on my 2025 bingo card. Diehard Liberal supporters are now boycotting Rosemary Barton. This is unbelievable. So we'll just show you the clip here first. And if you saw the last video, I'll just show a few seconds here of the clip.
Line with the rules in advance. Point final.
Are you saying you are not open to any conflict of interest?
Yes.
You spent most of your time life in the private sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. That's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will. I have served in the private sector.
You know, he just goes on to gaslight. This guy's unbelievable. So that's why Liberals are now trying to cancel Rosemary Barton, as we see this one here. Rosemary Barton needs to find a new job. I will now boycott CBC whenever Rosie is on air, and will text my strong opposition to her remaining on the CBC. Please join me. The left is eating itself. The blind partisanship of these clowns is something to behold. We're living in the weirdest times. Buckle up, buckaroos. So there's a whole bunch of these. Kirk was posting about this here. This is the one I just showed you, but there's this one on Foreign Soil. Our unprofessional chief political correspondent for CBC, Rosemary Barton, chooses to degrade our PM and embarrasses Canada rather than ask a relevant question. Thank you, Mark Carney, for finally calling out Rosemary Barton. Her nonsense and dog whistling line of questioning is out of hand. You can lodge an official complaint against Rosemary here. These Liberals are out of control. How easily they'd flip to defund the CBC if it had an ounce of objective neutrality. Look inside yourself, Rosemary. Fun fact, Mark Carney did invent Buddhism, and he invented original thought and the brain and everything. New enemy of Liberals, noxious conservative Rosemary. Get your noxious conservative Rosemary Barton. Never change Liberal Twitter. The recent CBC is so anti-liberal turn on Twitter has been absolutely hilarious. Look at this one here. PM Carney just told abhorrent Globe and Mail reporter Stephanie and deplorable Rosemary Barton to go stuff their questions sideways. These two horrible journalists suggested that PMMC is lying and hiding conflicts of interest. They are absolutely having a meltdown. From now on, CBC will be banned from interviewing Carney. I wouldn't be surprised. How dare Rosemary ask basic questions? And we got a full rant here. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but just goes on to blubber about Mark Carney. We need bold, unconventional leaders willing to take on the responsibility of guiding the country through these unprecedented challenges. It is hard work. It is a sacrifice. Show some respect, Rosemary. Enough already. If CBC doesn't fire Rosemary Barton after her shameful behavior in London yesterday, Canadians should be very worried. The stakes are high. Canada's democracy and sovereignty are at stake. Undermining our leader by spreading disinformation on the world stage is unacceptable. This is Rosemary after the event in London. Here she's talking about Mark Carney and dealing with Donald Trump.
Because it could be disastrous for our economy. So he's also signaling kind of what a negotiation or a further negotiation with Donald Trump would look like. It cannot be endless. And he reiterated yet again that point that you've heard before, David, that in order to sit down at the table with Donald Trump to have a conversation, he wants those disrespectful comments about the 51st state to end.
Mark Carney's politely asking Donald Trump to do something. Okay, that's not going to happen. Donald Trump's going to do whatever he wants. Does he not know who the guy is? So with the woke left melting down, they're also doing it in America. Check out this. So the woke left embraced Elon Musk up until he decided to support Trump because he wanted business to be better in America and he was tired of the corruption. Now they're burning down all these Teslas and Tesla charging stations.
We have people we're locking up on that. We have someone in jail right now from one of the dealerships. They threw a Molotov cocktail through a dealership. They're looking at up to 20 years in prison. So if you're going to touch a Tesla, go to a dealership, do anything, you better watch out because we're coming after you. Wow. And if you're funding this, we're coming after you. We're going to find out who you are.
So,
20 years in jail for throwing a Molotov through the window. Time to crack down on this crap. Got this one from the National Post. Says Mark Carney's been prime minister for all of a week and he already can't be bothered with conventions of Canadian democracy. This is a good article. It goes on to talk about how the first thing is to go down and meet with the president of America, but instead he flew over to France because he's a European. He's not even addressing the situation. He could bring back Parliament right now and do a throne speech or call an election. There's no reason to be prorogued anymore. He's gallivanting off now to Iqaluit for photo ops. It's all part of the master plan, as Bradshaw's posted here. WF, they're all WF. They're working through a plan here together. This is really what the meeting in Europe was for. And look at this, we've got Doug Ford with Chrystia Freeland. I thought Ford was a conservative. I thought so too. Says a lot, doesn't it? They're all in it together. It's sickening. Yeah, they are. Next up, I've got two campaign ads back to back. This is the Conservatives, and then I'll play the Liberal one.
But if you're looking at this today, you're not going to see, like so far, we don't have any new faces.
So don't expect some of the key figures to be out of cabinet. Maybe some will keep the same jobs. It'll shuffle a bit.
Take a look right now. Jonathan Wilkinson and Stephen Guilbeault.
Also doesn't feel all that different. We saw so many familiar faces on the walk-in. The question is, how successful can you be if you're also bringing in a cabinet with Chrystia Freeland? You're also bringing in a cabinet with Stephen Guilbeault. Are Canadians going to buy that? Is it going to be believable, or is it going to feel like, as Lisa put it earlier in the show, the same government more or less seeking a fourth mandate?
Is just like Justin. Nothing's changing here. He's just more radical than Trudeau. And contrast, here's Mark Carney's ad.
Canada has been built by the strength of its people. From our mines to our ports, from our logging roads to our city streets, we're strongest when we are united. When we can cheer for different teams and still be on one team, when it counts.
When we come together, we build things that last because we are Canada strong.
He is so bad at speaking. There's no emotion in his voice whatsoever. Take a look at his crowd. It's everyone's over 80 years old. I can't see anyone young wanting to vote for this guy. He's going to make housing more expensive. Once he starts doing deals with China and using Chinese money to buy up more Canadian housing, game over. Well, look at this. They've finally done it. They finished the housing design catalog. Remember that Wartime Measures housing catalog that Sean Fraser, that absolute loser, promised year and a half, 2 years ago?
The housing design catalog is now out. The designs are thoughtful, environmentally sound, and most importantly, they are easy to build. They will make home building simpler and faster, helping to drive down costs. Look, there are many things we need to do to tackle the housing crisis, and this is one important thing. But don't take it from me. Listen to some of the architects who oversaw this process and contributed to these designs.
Why is there so few windows on these? Like, look at this. There's no windows on the side of this house.
Everything's been thought through. It's an architecturally designed home, and that's something that a lot of people don't experience, and it's a real luxury.
For most of the designs in the catalog, it can take from 6 months up to around 14 months to get it built.
They can be rebuilt.
This is not going to save Canada, please. This program's fine. Like, sure, add it to the list of things we can do, but this is not going to save the housing crisis. We need to eliminate immigration. The Conservatives really need to come out and say they're cutting immigration down to 50,000 people per year and take a strong stance, a stance that the Liberals won't follow them on. Because right now, Pierre announced, I believe, 200,000, but that's not low enough. And he has to be lower, and lower to a point where Carney can't copy. 50,000 per year. That's what we need to get Canada back on track, where there's more houses being built than there are people coming in.
Very quickly, for a number of reasons. They are all designed to be fabricated, built out of wood.
Like, why is there so little windows? These look like Soviet houses. Some of them are nice, but like, this is crazy. I've never seen houses with so little windows.
Which makes them a lot faster than, say, concrete or steel. The products that go into the house are readily accessible in every region. Because they are small lots in residential neighborhoods, all of the approvals are very simple to get through on a very quick basis. We are providing not just architectural drawings, but structural, mechanical, electrical, environmental.
All of these designs are easy to build with off-the-shelf construction materials and systems, and also that the assemblies are resilient, durable, and energy efficient.
It would have been smarter to do this in conjunction with a factory that could build frameworks for the base of the foundation, maybe certain structures, whether it's wood or steel, and they would all have the exact same one. So factories could build numerous of these things, and then a builder can come and just pick it up and stick it in and bolt it down, and they already have like a bunch of their work done, essentially like Lego blocks, and then build out the rest of the house.
And energy efficient enough that you can save on your bills.
We didn't want something that just looked like it dropped in from the sky and it was like that house on the street. We wanted something that was contemporary but felt like a home, not like an institution. You're designing for, an end user as opposed to a speculative real estate investor. So with an end user, you think about where are they going to put things? How are they going to live in this space? Maybe
not according to Mark Carney. He wants more Chinese investors to buy Canadian houses.
How things can change so that you can use things differently over time.
Look, I don't want to oversell it, but this is good news, and CMHC has all of the designs available online.
There you go, folks. They finally delivered one of their promises like a year and a half late. Stopping mass immigration would also work, but the Liberals won't. As a former building contractor, every major building supply outlet has a catalog of homes already. So we got this one here. So David Eby came out just a few days ago and said he'll be tolling trucks driving up to Alaska through British Columbia, American trucks. And now, as it says here, is that they've awakened the sleeping giant. As a northernmost state says it will consider ending a requirement for foreign flagged U.S. cruise ships to stop in Canada whenever traveling between the lower 48s and Alaska. So they're going to stop their Canadian stops. Congratulations, Eby. Do you think he can win this trade war now? Eby heard reciprocal tariffs and just ignored it. Pushed ahead with his overreaching stupidity. Sayonara, Vancouver cruise ships. Basically, yep. Next up, we got a story here on CTV about canola farmers and how terrible life is right now in Canada because of the Liberal government.
Canola farmers in this country are feeling vulnerable, facing looming trade barriers imposed by their two largest export markets, the U.S. and China, which is set to impose a 100% tariff next week. CTV's Alison Bamford.
Yeah, China. Not Orange Man bad. Not Donald Trump. It's China. There's no mention of China. Where's all the ban China going on in Canada? You don't hear anything about that. You hear Mark Carney talking about banning China. Mark Carney likes China. He likes Chinese money. He likes all that big, greasy Xi Jinping, CCP wealth, big, greasy stacks of cash coming from China. He's not going to step on China's toes. Neither is Stephen Guilbeault. It's a guy who sits on the board of a Chinese group. I don't see them pulling the bottles off the shelves coming from China. I don't see them pulling products coming off the shelves from China. The hypocrisy here is out of control.
Jared Gust is counting down the days before he's back in the field.
We start planting in, let's say, 30 days.
The Saskatchewan farmer still plans to grow canola this year, despite the crop facing a double dose of potential tariffs.
These are like really unprecedented times, like having the Americans and the Chinese come at us at the same time.
On top of a 25% tariff from the U.S., China plans to impose a 100% retaliatory tariff on Canadian canola oil starting Thursday. It follows Canada's 100% tariff placed on Chinese electric vehicles last fall. The federal government has said there are no plans to drop those.
There needs to be action by our federal government before any election call to engage with China to ensure that the canola industry is not left in purgatory.
$4.9 billion of Canadian canola, the cooking oil ingredient, went to China last year. Experts say Chinese tariffs could impact thousands of jobs in canola crushing facilities and squash markets.
It is going to take a big bite out of canola prices.
A hit that could hurt Canada just as much as the U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum.
They're both big risks to the country, but those hit very different regions with very different voting patterns, and that changes the politics.
But farmers like Gust are tired of playing politics.
We don't want to be pawns in somebody's trade game.
A game he hopes ends soon. Alison Bamford, CT.
These farmers are getting screwed out of this. They break their backs for this. Carney goes over to Europe. He's not even dealing with China because he gets funding from China. Donors came to his event who are from China, directly connected to the CCP. Once again, there's no talk of banning anything from China, even though they're putting tariffs on us. And it's always Canadians that get screwed. Well, there we have it. You just can't predict this stuff. I mean, Rosemary Barton now getting canceled by by the woke left? This is so bizarre. Are the woke left now in favor of defunding the CBC? It's funny because the woke left have always criticized the right as being the ones who are crazy, but it's always been the woke left that are the crazy ones. They're the ones who burn down things and do crazy things. The question is now, with the polls of where are they at, Mark Carney going to pull the trigger and call an election? Or do they have polling data showing that the numbers aren't that good and he won't win? Parliament's set to resume in 6 days. Mark Carney's got to make a decision here pretty quick.